Hi, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, your host. First up today, Greg Wims is going to be talking about the 5th anniversary of the founding of the Family Justice Center, which has been working in our community with families of victims of domestic violence. Next up, we've got Laurie Duker of Court Watch Montgomery, also working very hard in the domestic violence area. In fact, her organization has a set of recommendations that will soon be coming out about the impact, or trying to reduce the impact on children of domestic violence. She also has some news about a new award recently given to her organization. Henry Hailstock's here. He's going to be talking about healthcare. Healthcare costs out of control, and hopefully he's going to provide some recommendations about how we can control some of those costs in the future. And finally, Shu-Ping Chan of US Asia Links. He's here with concerns about how small businesses can control or maintain their reputation online, even while those around them may be trying to sully that reputation. Greg Wims, welcome back. It's always great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Victims' Rights Foundation and everything else that you do in our community. And a host of a show.
Yes.
Yes.
But today, Don, I'm so excited to say the Family Justice Center celebrated their 5th anniversary last week. In 2009, they started to help victims of domestic violence here in Montgomery County.
Okay, Family Justice Center. What is that, and why was it created?
Well, it's a unique partnership between public and the private sector. Mm-hmm. It helps the victims of domestic violence. It helps their families, their children. It also gives counseling and so forth to those victims.
Okay.
And Montgomery County, we're so proud to say, is one of the first centers like this in the country. And in particular, though, they have a video conference center where the victim can come to this center.
Okay.
They don't have to go to court. They can talk through video to the judge, and they can get a peace order or restraining order. And I believe we were one of the first, if not the first, in the country to have that.
Well, having gone through that process, representing victims of domestic violence through those orders, it is very, very scary for the victims, because if you're in court, you have the perpetrator right next to you, and you can't just cut off all those things that brought on that abuse.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, before that happened, there were incidents, not only just here in Montgomery County, but all over the country, where the abuser would in fact try to abuse that person right there when they're in court. So it's just a fantastic organization. But I want to add something else to it.
Yeah.
Not only do they have this great facility, they have a child-friendly section where when the parent or parents come in, the child can actually have a guidance counselor or something,
okay,
talking with them, playing with them as the victim goes through the process. So it's all encompassing the Family Justice Center.
Now, we're going to talk about children and the impact of domestic violence on children in our next segment.
Okay.
But when you're talking about victim, you're not just talking, and often it's a female spouse.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, but children are the victims too, aren't they?
Absolutely, and they started a thing, they call it Smart Child, and what it does is help children who witness the domestic violence get counseling, professional counseling, and to help them so that they won't become the abuser when they become adults. Because studies have shown that if a child sees this and they don't get the counseling or the help, they become the abuser later.
You know,
So
often, I guess my concern is that often when somebody comes forward to complain about domestic violence, the intimidation is there, the uncertainty is there, the concern as far as their well-being is there, and retaliation. How does that the center help with that and assure them that justice will prevail?
Well, I can say first, I want to say this, pretty much run under the Sheriff Department, although it's a collaboration between private sector, but Sheriff Popkin pretty much is the one that started it with help from others. And so when you're at the center, you definitely have the protection. The sheriffs is right there, they're armed, and so an abuser cannot get in. But as they walk out or they leave, to answer your question, it's just a matter of the counseling that they get to say, look, be careful, watch your surroundings, etc. Because you can never say 100% that something will happen, but because of the center and the counseling they get and the advice they get, we find that most victims that come in are safe, and they go to court when their court trial date is there, and it works very well.
But I think also with the Abused Persons Program too, in cooperation with the sheriff, the county was one of the first to implement a safety zone in houses with a necklace and taking it off if the abuser's coming in. Also cell phones that are dedicated just to 911. So
Absolutely.
it's a part, isn't? I mean, Laurie, is it just a part of a whole network? Isn't
That's
it?
right. It's a whole network, and that's what's important. The Family Justice Center is terrific because they do link victims to social services, which a lot of times are the gap where things fall through and a victim has to return to the house. And Family Justice Center is so important because we have a serious domestic violence problem in the county. We have over 93,000 women can expect to experience violence with an intimate partner sometime in their life, just in our county.
So
The
how does it work out?
homicide rate has gone up every 3 years, each of the last 3 years for the state.
So if someone files for an order like that, would they have to have the perpetrator move out of the house? How does that work out for someone who might, who might face this in the future?
On that one, what they do with the protective order, they have to stay so many feet or so many yards away. So absolutely. And then the sheriff department, through the Family Justice Center, are monitoring. So whenever they pick up that phone, as you said, he's or she, because some men also get abused, but it's mostly women.
Right.
We'll say that. So yes, that happens.
Okay. And then I guess you take donations of used cell phones for
I have to
use?
say on that, the partnership, they have Verizon, first of all, that pays for the video, but they also have several businesses like Enterprise Cars and others who donate funds so that if a victim needs a cell phone, there's even food for children who come in every day, and that's by a woman named Judith Clark at Women Who Care Ministries. So again, the Family Justice Center is a model of the community, the total community, to help the victim that comes in and their children.
It's a real one-stop shop, which is
Yes.
great.
We've got 30 seconds left, 25 seconds left. Any things you want to add?
Only thing I would add that what I'm impressed with now, they started a program to help teenage and even middle school students to get counseling on what they see and what they've seen, but also preventive measures.
Good.
Because I know, and I think all of us would agree, if a child sees domestic violence and thinks it's okay, when they become adults, they will repeat that pattern. So I like what they're doing with young people.
Good. Well, I hope they keep it up, and hope you'll keep coming back. And I hope we look forward to having you come back so we learn more about Victim Rights Foundation as well.
Okay.
Laurie, welcome back.
Thank you.
Court Watch Montgomery. We're continuing on with the discussion of domestic violence. Let's talk about those
Yes.
kids, the most innocent of victims in a domestic violence situation.
Yes, we've been collecting data for a year in circuit court about the kids who are in families that are requesting protective orders. And what we found is really shocking. Judges don't even ask the question, where were the kids during these incidents when they're deciding their visitation plans? The vast majority of kids that witness violence are not just hearing it from afar, but are entangled in the incident. They're being
Are we talking about a high percentage of domestic violence situations that are witnessed by children, or is it a low percentage?
Well, it's hard to get data. When the issue comes up in court, we found 40% of kids witnessed, and most of those were entangled in incidents. But again, the judges don't ask, so we think the percentage is a lot more than 40% of children.
Sure, because a lot of the domestic violence, isn't it? I mean, I've seen studies. It's often where you've got kids, it's about kids or money, isn't it?
It's often about that. It's about power and control, but
Right.
there are things that the court can do that really can make a difference in breaking the cycle of violence and in building kids' resiliency.
Let me stop you 1 second. We've got a website if people want to learn more. What's that website?
www.courtwatchmontgomery.org.
Okay, sorry, Henry.
I just wondered how often do you have to have the children testify in cases of domestic violence?
It's a real question that most advocates like to leave to the mother in terms of whether they think it's healthy for the children. Usually at about the age of 12, judges become more willing to hear what the children think are in their best interests and whether the kids are going to feel safe.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because, as you put it, domestic violence often has no witnesses, except if the children are there
Yes.
the vast majority of times. But
Right.
doesn't that put the children in what a terrible situation, isn't it?
It can, although many kids, especially adolescents, I find it very cathartic and empowering to be able to tell an impartial person what's happened to them and also to stick up for their mom, who they know is a victim,
Right.
and for their brothers and sisters. So it can be a positive thing.
I look at it in a different way because you have two parents. You want both parents to be together. You don't want them to argue or fuss or even have that violence in the home. And you ask a child, if they're 12 or older, to testify against one or the other. That's got to be tremendous. And I guess my other question is if you have someone that or a child that's younger, if they have some kind of counselor who can work with a child to get
Yes.
some type of testimony offline. Is that used in a case or not?
It's interesting. Kids are at serious risk, both for physical and mental injury. And infants are at the most risk, actually, because they're often in the arms of their mom or dad when something happens. And the new science on brain science shows us that kids' brains are actually physically changed by trauma so that they lack the ability to learn and concentrate, things that follow them their whole lives, high risk for addiction. The victim advocates do interview the children and work to get some of that information into the petition in a written way so the judge can see it without the child being involved. And certainly, and the Circuit Court is going to open a daycare where children can wait during these hearings, which will be excellent.
Well, new law, if domestic violence is perpetrated in front of a minor or a child, enhanced penalties, is that right?
Yes, which is excellent, and also a lowering of the burden of proof. We were the only state until Senator Frost worked to change that this year so that we have a standard of preponderance of evidence. Which will be
Now, I
much
wanted to
better.
ask about your report, though. When will you give the report? Or
The report will be out in 2 to 3 weeks, and instead of just talking to judges, we're talking to council members and the county exec, because we think there are a couple critical programs that we lack. The Family Justice Center is fantastic, but what we really need are 2 exchange centers where parents can safely exchange children for visits without seeing each other, without additional abuse and intimidation. And this is a flashpoint, as you know, that can turn violent quickly.
Sure.
And we think we could do this without a lot of money in existing county buildings Friday to Sunday. And so we want to set up that kind of program, and we also need a supervised visitation center.
You know, I have a question that probably both of you can basically
About a
answer.
minute.
Okay.
Left and second.
You know, they say that the adult brain or brain of a person does not really fully mature until they're 25. A child that is involved with, you know, domestic violence,
Yes.
how would a counselor try to overcome, if that's a word, that dramatic experience for them to move forward?
Centers for Disease Control has some very interesting new research on this, and what they find is that safe, secure, nurturing relationships make a big difference in actually can help break the cycle of violence.
Okay.
So that that's a lot of the focus, and that's why exchange centers and supervised visits are so important, because you're keeping that child insulated from further ongoing trauma.
You know, I would love that this would be the last word on domestic violence. We don't have to worry about domestic violence, but I have a feeling we'll be talking about this topic for a long time to come. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Henry Hailstock, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice being here.
The topics you bring up on this show every month are very timely. This one is as timely as any, healthcare. We've now gone through, I guess, the great storm of Obamacare. Millions of people have signed up. We're moving ahead, but not a lot's changed though in the costs. Are the costs still skyrocketing for healthcare in the United States?
Unfortunately, it has, and it consistently will until we, as patients, do something about it. It's funny that with medical care, back in the day, they were fighting to have doctors wash their hands. and the one doctor that pursued that was drummed out of the profession because of that. Now we still have a little problem with doctors washing their hands, but it's more so now. You look at the improvement in science and technology that has allowed the system to really treat diseases, yet the stress and the volume of new discoveries really inhibits the system to really effectively generate and manage knowledge and to really apply it to everyday regular care.
Henry, let me
That's the
ask you this
biggest
question.
problem.
I mean, healthcare in the United States is very expensive. How do we
$2.8 trillion
1/6 of the
that
economy.
we pay.
1/6 of the economy.
So how do we compare with other countries? I mean, like Japan. I think patients. Or I'm not going to have you be on the spot for different countries, but are we more expensive or less expensive than other countries?
We're more expensive. And if you look at across the border to Canada treats and cares for everybody publicly, and you don't have that expense out there. You look at the real problem, you're dealing with unnecessary treatment, excessive bureaucracy, unnecessary use of cost on equipment.
Right.
You look at fraud and the bureaucracy that is
Right.
entailed. They look at that cost alone each year
Of the bureaucracy or of fraud?
of the waste
Right.
of everything
Waste,
I
got
just
it.
mentioned
Right.
amounts to $768 billion. Now that's more than our defense budget.
Well, there certainly is overprescription. I mean, the problem with, say, antibiotics is overprescription of
Yes.
antibiotics to the point where some germs are resistant to antibiotics now.
And that's the biggest problem. That was just in the news.
That was just in the news
Just in
recently.
the news.
Isn't it crazy, and I want to open it up for everybody else, but isn't it crazy that if we're sick, we go to a doctor, insurance is supposed to cover it, and we're having to deal with some clown on the other end of the phone who doesn't want to take care of any of this stuff?
Well, you look at somebody that's on Medicare and Medicaid. All right, they go to their doctor. You can go to, I hate to exaggerate, but I'm not really exaggerating. You can be going to 6 different doctors, and all of the paperwork ensuing in that, and there's no coordination, and that's the biggest thing. I have gone to a new insurance company. I won't mention it, and the bureaucracy that's there. The only thing I like about it is that they're digitally sound.
Right.
And we need that. And really, patients need to be their own advocates,
Right.
to be honest with
They
you.
do, because you go see 5 different doctors, they'll tell you
Yes.
5 different contradictory things.
And there you can have a mix of medication that can affect you adversely. And that has happened with my life. So, you need to be careful of that.
Well, here, before we came on air, you mentioned something about like a back brace.
Oh,
That
yeah.
it would be $100 or so. And then tell us a little bit about that. As an
There was
example.
an example that I read that a regular back brace that was manufactured was $191 as far as cost and retail. That went for insurance $919. It's really ridiculous.
A lot of
And
middlemen,
you can come up with other examples.
I'll
of
give you
it,
an
too.
example. I had surgery about, 10 years ago. I asked for some petroleum jelly for my lips because it was dry. The bill was like $30 for a little tube of petroleum jelly, $30.
And you can go to the grocery store and get
CVS
it
for
for a couple of
$1.99,
dollars.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now, you would think, though, this would be a popular item for politicians to go after and to change and find some extra dollars there.
You look at what happened with, I hate to call it Obamacare. It is the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay, let's leave it at
We have
that.
about 30 seconds left.
And you would think so, but this is the main fight for a lot of people. If we cut in half the waste that's there, we have money to spend for other things that will help the economy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, let's also not forget about the dollars that are coming into the coffers of all the politicians to keep all these things from happening. That's
Very
True
much
enough.
so.
That's another-
And
that's another
that's
part
the
of the
problem that I have as well. Really, the bureaucracy. Really,
and continues on. Henry, I look forward to the next topic coming back next month.
I'll work on it.
Thanks. Shu-Ping,
Yes, sir.
welcome back.
Thank you, Don. Good to see you.
You too. I mean, it's always interesting topics when you're coming on. We're gonna talk about preservation of online reputations.
That's right.
For small businesses. What happens for
Well,
small businesses?
You go online sometimes, look for a restaurant review, a review of a service, a professional service, or a hotel or something like that. And I look on them. Years ago, when the onset of social media was just beginning, business owners would be, oh my gosh, I got a bad review. I got a 1 star out of 5. What are we going to do? But now I think things have settled down a little bit, as with all things, that you get a lot of good reviews, you get a lot of bad reviews. So for the consumer out there, I guess let's start off with the consumer. If you read a review online, take it with a grain of salt. Find out if there's a hidden agenda by the person who wrote it. Was it an actual?
Yeah, but how can you do that? I
legit-
mean, I think of a small hotel. I've got a hotel. Somebody puts a hotel in next to me, and just purely by coincidence, a review about that next door neighbor's
Terrible.
hotel. My stay was great, but for the cockroaches that were running over
And
me,
the
the
bed
rats
bugs.
that were eating our, my food,
Right.
and the fact that all the food or all the linen was dirty.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was a great stay.
Well,
what do you do
read-
about that?
Check if it's a real person, it's a real name, and their email
Do you
address.
have to call them?
No, if they have an email address, send them an email. I mean, find out who they are first of all, and read the other ones. Don't go just by the stars, but read the actual wording. Sometimes, food was terrible, and that was it. So give me some details. Read the details as a consumer of Yelp or other online services of reviews. TripAdvisor.
I can give you a
whatever.
great example. I went back to my college homecoming for the first time, so I was looking for hotels there, knowing that at homecoming, everything was going to be booked. So I was looking for something. I didn't want right in the main thing because I didn't want to deal with all the crowds. So looking off campus or off mainstream, and looking at the reviews.
Right.
Myself and my teammate was doing that. He said, read these, these testimonies. So I did, and there were like 2 testimonies, and you could tell when somebody is doing something personally. Okay, and if you read more than one, all right, you will get an idea of what the actual stay will be. But if you look online and you see one bad review or maybe 2 bad reviews, what that content is.
Exactly.
I was fortunate not to stay in the hotel that was like the official hotel for the homecoming, because last year they were talking about having bed bugs and it was
there you
like
go.
5 or see, it was like 5 or 6 people saying
Right.
that.
Well, if that's
After a
the case.
while, I said,
That could be the case.
Well, those,
Yeah.
Great.
You have to worry about the other side of this too, don't you? I worry about businesses that regularly hire people
They
to
do.
put in
Put bad things about
many,
their
many, many good
competitors.
reviews.
Never in the history of the
for
world
real.
have we seen somebody like right. What do you
Right. So, well, you just have to be careful as any consumer out there. Buyer beware. Read the good ones and the bad ones. What I do personally is I read the bad ones to see the detail. What went bad? Sometimes they say I had highest expectations of this restaurant. It was supposed to be the best restaurant in the world, and it only came out B+ instead of A+. So so you have to read the reviews. But I guess for the business owner, how you should deal with that in the beginning. 10 years ago, when the social media onslaught first began, I guess people would get all worried. But it's good to read those reviews as a business owner. Respond to the ones that look legitimate, and try to fix the problem. And say, I am not perfect. None of us are perfect, and we don't run perfect businesses.
With Greg here, Victim Rights Foundation, I'm thinking of you're a victim. What rights do you have of some vindictive person who's trying to destroy my reputation? Haven't the courts started weighing in on this issue?
Yes, they have. I think the anonymity of the internet, they were discussing whether if someone anonymously puts up something, are you liable for slander if you write something that's untrue? I think the courts are still out around the country about that, but it's good as a business owner to respond to that. If it's a reasonable reasonably looking review, respond to it reasonably and say, I understand your problem, you ran some problems, and here's how we respond. But if you get the same reviewer writing every week, then maybe that's not worth
But
responding to.
any legitimate website will be more responsive and responsible for their writings, and because they would be liable to some degree if they accept some of these anonymous, reviews and what have you. So that's what I'm looking at. I think really with this litigious society,
that might be a good policy.
That
might be a good policy that you cannot just put anonymous reviews. You have to put at least your email address or something.
Exactly.
We've got 30 seconds left.
I'm just going to say in the next 30 seconds, could you tell us what we as consumers should be doing then?
Well, if you use the reviews, you have to spend a little time, like reading anything else, go into anything else, read more than one review. Just don't look at the number of stars, the number of whatever it is, and then read what they actually say. And then if you start reading 5 reviews that sound awfully similar, you gotta get suspicious in terms of the wording and everything else. It might be the same person using 5 different addresses. Just like anything else, buyer beware. You just have to be
Some
careful
common
out
sense.
there. Just a lot of it is common sense, exactly. For
Common
the consumer and for the business owner.
That's the last word.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for joining me today, and I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, and I invite you to join us again next week at this very same time.